Can you hear Diana?
Diana?
All right. We are trying
But we
to
can't
sort
hear
out
you, Dorcas.
All right. So as Diana is trying to sort out the audio issues, I can start the presentation and then she'll take over at some point.
Yes, please.
All right. Okay, I think we're having both. Okay, just give us like a minute so that we sort out whatever issue we're having, kindly.
Okay.
Okay, I think we can begin now. Apologies for that delay. Challenges in
All right.
technology. So revenue authorities have been leveraging on technology over the last few years just to make sure business transactions from taxpayers are done in real time or near real time basis. And due to that, and the dynamics of the taxpayers and the operating environment, the revenue authorities are challenged to explore simplified and flexible solutions that address the unique needs. And as you are aware, KRA is trying to do that. And this is achieved by harnessing the taxpayer ecosystem in tailoring and attractive simplified solutions that require minimum adjustments by the taxpayers as they endeavor to comply. So because I believe this presentation was done previously, so we'll just run through it very quickly so you know what eTims is and what we're trying to achieve. And what we are trying to achieve is to make tax compliance as easy and as simple as possible. And this has been the journey of the e-invoicing in Kenya. So in 2005, we started by introducing the electronic tax register. Somebody cannot hear me. Sudi, kindly confirm if the rest of you can hear me.
We can hear you clearly.
Okay, all right.
Maybe
so maybe the
we
Sudi
can
has,
check.
can check their gadget.
Yes,
So
yes.
it was the electronic tax register or ETRs were introduced in 2005, and this was for VAT registered taxpayers, and it had the capability of generating a fiscalized invoice. And then in 2016, there was the commencement of the TIMS implementation or the invoice transmission device-based approach. So previously, like in 2005, taxpayers would generate the ETR, but it was not transmitted to KRA. But in 2016, that implementation of an invoice or an ETR that could transmit to KRA was started. And then that's when the development started. So in 2020, the rollout targeting VAT registered taxpayers was done. And then afterwards, in 2022, there was the introduction of the eTims flexible software solution with online portal, client solution, and system-to-system integration. So the TIMS implementation was a device-based implementation, but now the eTims one was a software-based implementation of e-invoicing. Then in February 2023, the commencement of the full rollout of the eTims invoicing was done. And in 1st of September, the commencement of the rollout of eTims to non-VAT registered taxpayers. So previously it was just for VAT registered taxpayers, but from 2023 September, the rollout was done to non-VAT registered taxpayers. And then in 2024, there was the development now of eCitizen, USSD, WhatsApp buyer-initiated solution, as well as reverse invoicing. So these were not there previously, but that was introduced in 2024. Again, we are continuing to develop more ways of making it as easy as possible for taxpayers to comply. So the objectives of eTims were, one is to minimize the cost of compliance to taxpayers, because those of you who've joined eTims, I believe most of you know that you do not, as compared to previously where you had to buy a gadget, now you do not have to buy a gadget. You can either do it online or you can use your existing devices such as laptops or mobile phones or desktops, for example. Then expand the reach to taxpayers in other tax sets. So as we have said, this was introduced to non-VAT registered taxpayers. So people who have turnover tax and monthly rental income, those are what eTims is also targeting, not just VAT registered taxpayers. Then simplification of the tax filing systems, or rather processes. For example, now there's the auto-populated return. For those of you who have VAT, know how easy the process has been for the majority of taxpayers. Of course, we've had some teething problems, but generally speaking, if you do not have the teething problems that people have experienced, it should be a very easy process. And then it has reduced the number of nil and non-filers and continues to reduce those numbers because, KRA is here just to make sure that we collect the taxes for this country so that we can build our country. Then provide a solution with flexible options for all taxpayers. As I have described, you can see there's various options for whichever taxpayer and whatever they're able to afford. And then provide visibility to taxable transactions in the informal sector, thus expanding the tax base. Again, it's open to non-VAT registered taxpayers, and therefore we expect as many taxpayers to be able to join or to get as many taxpayers as possible so that we carry this tax burden as the people of Kenya, not just a few individuals. And then increase tax compliance and accountability. Again, that has been done through, because we are able to see the transactions. And then maximize revenue collection. KRA exists to collect revenue on behalf of the government. And so the more taxes we are able to collect, the more we are able to build our country, and that is the aim. And then address the missing trader phenomenon by providing visibility on taxpayer transactions, therefore minimizing VAT fraud and generally tax fraud. The legal frameworks that have been supporting eTims are, one, the Finance Act 2023. As I had mentioned earlier, this is when in September, taxpayers, non-VAT registered taxpayers were supposed to onboard on eTims, because it says or provides that all taxpayers with business income must use an electronic tax invoicing system to generate and transmit the tax invoices to KRA. And it also provides exemptions for things like emoluments, interest income, imports, air ticketing services, etc., etc. And then we have the Tax Procedures Act, Amendment Act rather, 2024, expanded on the legal basis of eTims implementation and also made provision for development of simplified solutions to facilitate compliance. Legal framework for electronic tax invoicing. These are the key highlights. So all taxpayers with business income are required to support the income tax expenditure. That is section 16 of the Income Tax Act with the electronic tax invoices. For small scale traders or farmers whose annual turnover does not exceed 5 million, the purchaser shall issue a tax invoice for the purpose of ascertaining the tax liability. And this was introduced by the Tax Law Amendment Act of 2024. Resident and non-resident taxpayers with business income are required to transmit transactional data and maintain a record of stock through the system. Then exemption or exclusions provided for electronic invoicing and stock management. And should a taxpayer be unable to onboard, they must provide an alternative means to avail transactional data and provision for penalty. So those are the key highlights of the legal framework. These are the exclusions, as I had mentioned earlier, and these are provided for in section 23A of the TPA. There's emoluments, there's imports, investment allowances, including internal accounting adjustments, airline passenger ticketing, interest, fees charged by financial institutions, expenses subject to withholding tax, that is a final tax, services provided by an unresident person without a permanent establishment in Kenya, and any other exclusion that may be provided under section 23A of the TPA. And that means that if you do not fall under those categories, then you need to use the eTims or electronic invoicing to do your invoices. These are the eTims solutions that are available. There's the device-based approach. Again, we're just highlighting them. So the first solution was rolled out and the cost of compliance was high, informing the need to explore and develop the software-based solution listed below. And this was the Teams implementation, which I had told you is basically just device-based, and this was for VAT registered taxpayers, which was introduced in 2020. And then online portal, it's suitable for taxpayers with minimum transactions and services, as well as there's eTims client, and this is suitable for those trading in goods, that is retail and wholesale. And this is usually installed on a gadget, either a laptop, a phone, or a PDA machine, or as well as a desktop. Then we have system-to-system integration, and this involves integration with software billing system. This is done by third-party integrators who have been vetted and authorized by KRA, and they are listed on the KRA website. So you can be able to check them out and have a conversation. Then simplified solutions. So we have the simpler solutions from online and e-client, which is we have an USSD. This means if you do not have a phone, maybe you have a kabambe, you can use the USSD to generate your invoices. We have the eCitizen portal. We have the eTims Lite mobile application, currently being used mostly by small scale traders who are not registered for VAT, these simplified solutions. And we have the reverse invoicing and buyer-initiated solution, where the buyer generates a tax invoice on behalf of the seller. So mostly this is targeting people who are supplied again by, say, farmers or just small-scale traders, and you as a business can invoice on behalf of the person selling to you. In order to improve on the user experiences, these are the enhancements that we've had as at 6 February 2023, that is last month. So one, we have had the simplification of the eTims registration, the online registration, where we do not require you to upload any documents as compared to before. Those who joined previously know that you needed to attach a couple of documents, but right now it has been simplified, so you do not need to upload any documents. And then we have auto approval of taxpayer applications and service requests. So this means that the service request automatically approved without KRA's intervention. So you do it from the comfort of your home or the comfort of your business. And then after that, you are able to just continue raising your invoicing. your invoices rather. Then we have a provision for taxpayers on onboarding on multiple devices or solutions. Taxpayers are now able to use different or multiple eTims solutions at the same time, meaning that if there's a problem with maybe one solution, you can always just go to the next solution. Or if, say, you have a device and it's in the office, you can be able to invoice, for example, online, if maybe you're invoicing from the person from your buyer's premises or wherever it is that you're supplying your goods or services. And then we have access to invoice data across various solutions. So taxpayers can access all invoices from different solutions. As I have said, you can have multiple solutions. You can have e-client and online. You can have e-client and say e-citizen portal, for example, and you can be able to see the invoices that you have generated. However, the disclaimer is credit notes can only be generated from the solution where the original invoice was raised. So if you raised it on online, you have to go, if you raised an invoice on online, you have to go back and raise the credit note on the online solution. However, the invoices can be seen from whatever platform you registered for. These are the successes that have been experienced when it comes to electronic invoicing. And one is enhanced visibility of taxpayer transactions, especially those operating in the informal sector, because transactions are transmitted to KRA and we're able to see them and just see how our taxpayers are doing. And then we've had tax-based expansion based on the above, because if somebody is trading with you and they need to claim those expenses, then you need to give them an eTims or a Teams invoice. And that means that we're able to see the transaction, and therefore we have a broader tax base as opposed to previously. And then we've had enhanced tax compliance management and enforcement. So because most of the time we will not come to the business to ask you for the invoice to verify, we can be able to see them from the KRA offices, since that data is available. And then increased VAT collection. So we've had a growth of 15.3% in the financial year that ended June 2024 compared to the previous year, where we had a growth of 13.4% in June 2023. Therefore, we believe that this is working, and we hope that it works even better. So we've also had a few challenges. We've not just had successes, and as many of you may be aware, have experienced at one time or another, we've had some technological issues. As you can see, even when we were beginning the meeting, we had a few technological issues, and it happens. So we've had some system downtime and reliability. But usually our ICT team is very prompt to resolve whatever issues that we have, but it happens. And then we have integration with other government systems. So we've had, because you have to have conversations upon conversations before you integrate one system to another, that has been quite a bit of a challenge, but we do the best that we can, and we've been able to integrate with some, and we are continuing to have some conversations with other government bodies. And then complexities of core systems. Yes, some of the eTims systems have been a bit of complicated, and taxpayers have been unable to just do it by themselves. And therefore, that's why you can see from our journey, we're trying to simplify as much as possible our system so that our taxpayers are able to comply with ease. And then we've also had digital literacy issues and access. One, we've had taxpayers who do not have smart electronic devices to support compliance, and it's just a reality. And some are not able to, even those who do have the smart gadgets, in some cases, they are not digitally literate, so they're not able to use the gadgets, and therefore we have to train them a bit more from our end. And then we've had geographical reach issues. Some places are very remote, and getting access to those places, especially from the taxpayers end, like having somebody maybe visit the KRA office has been a challenge because they're so far away from the nearest KRA office. And we've also had limited access to internet because not all places in Kenya are covered or have internet access or just network access generally. Then we've also had resistance to adoption, and as it happens for any change, there's usually resistance in some cases, but we are doing the best that we can just to bring awareness as KRA. And these are the initiatives that we have been carrying out to support the eTims implementation. As I have mentioned, one is taxpayer education. We are having mini sessions with many taxpayers just to educate them on what eTims means and how they can easily comply. And then the development of the simplified solutions that include those with offline functionality. As also, as I have mentioned, it's a continuous process and we're trying to make it as easy as possible for taxpayers to comply. And then diverse and multiple solutions to help taxpayers comply in their own environment. So we make it as easy as possible. And then stakeholder engagement by sector and taxpayer type. We're having this engagement with you today. So it's also something that we're continuously doing, not just with you, but also with other taxpayers. Publicity and awareness campaign that have been ongoing. Decentralization of support eTims services to all KRA regions and offices. So you do not need to come to Nairobi or the eTims office to be assisted. You can go to any office in KRA and they will assist you with eTims. These are the ongoing eTims developments. One, we have the buyer-initiated invoicing, which is already live, but we are continuing to onboard taxpayers on it and to continuously improve. Then we have the WhatsApp invoicing, as well as the virtual ETR. Then we also have the eTims implementation for fuel sector, which has been piloted, and I believe we will be rolling out to everyone very soon. And then we also have the simplification of the VAT return filing. Again, this is a continuous process, and I think very soon we'll be able to have it ready. I just want to discuss a bit of the buyer-initiated invoicing, and this is where the buyer initiates the invoice as opposed to the seller, which is normally what should happen. In ideal situations, the seller supplies whatever it is that they're supposed to be supplying, as well as they also give an invoice for that supply. But in this case, it is called a buyer-initiated invoicing, where the buyer is the one who initiates the invoice. And then a notification or an SMS notification is sent to the supplier. The supplier accepts or rejects. If they accept, then the invoice generation and transmission to KRA happens. If they reject, obviously it ends there, and if maybe there was a reason why they're rejecting it, then they start again. They get the SMS notification, accept, and the invoice is generated. And KRA provided this buyer-initiated invoicing as an alternative solution, tailor-made for sectors dealing with a large number of supplies, e.g., industries getting supplies, stock inputs directly from farmers. So instead of getting all those many invoices from the farmers, say the industry or the company then initiates the invoices from their end, and they can even do bulk invoicing. When you can do a bulk where you send SMSs to everyone who has done the supply, and they're able to accept, and all the invoices are generated and transmitted to KRA. The underlying concept is for the buyer to generate the invoice on behalf of the seller. However, the seller is required to give consent. That is why you see number 3 here, there's the option to either accept or reject, because invoices cannot just be generated on your behalf. We need the person selling to be aware that an invoice is being generated on their behalf. Therefore, they can be able to accept. from their end. And then the solution is live, as I have already mentioned, and it's accessible via the ecitizen.kra.go.ke and USSD *222#. Then we have the WhatsApp invoicing. This is where this was introduced on the WhatsApp business channel, and it's where it's using an AI technology or a bot. So one of the services to be availed through this channel is the WhatsApp invoicing, targeting SMEs who are not registered for VAT. This solution is meant to simplify the tax processes, reduce on tax evasion, boost voluntary tax compliance, just basically make it as easy as possible for taxpayers to comply. The WhatsApp invoicing system is currently under quality assurance before deployment. So testing has already been done, and so it's within a few months maybe or days it will be out to the public and somebody can be able to invoice. Then the third one is the virtual ETR. This is an initiative where a government directive that will facilitate integration with entities such as payment service provider, banks, and telcos to enable reporting of financial transactions. And the business impact of what we hope to achieve is there will be the promotion of fair business environment to everyone so that everyone pays their fair tax share of tax. And then tax-based expansion just to get those people who are not currently paying taxes, ensure or enhance tax compliance even to those who are paying, and increase the revenue as is KRA's mandate. We have the electronic invoicing in the fuel sector. As I had said, this has already been piloted or is continuing to be piloted and will be going live very, very, very soon. And what happens in that case is so the fuel station there's the fuel stations where they dispense at the forecourt, and then the forecourt controller there's a forecourt controller to allow seamless integration with the pumps, as well as the POS or fuel management system for forecourt, and then an invoice is generated. So what really generally happens is when you go to the fuel station dispenser, if you're buying fuel, when they start pumping fuel into your vehicle, it starts to let me just repeat that again. So once you are done fueling, so they have put fuel in your vehicle and they return the pump to they return the pump, then an invoice is generated and printed, and that information is sent to the KRA database. It is automatic because the connection has been done via the forecourt controller to send information or the invoice directly to KRA, as well as print that invoice for the person who is buying the fuel. So again, this was done specifically for the fuel industry because their business is a bit more special, just to make sure that they're not stopping to fuel just to go back and then start keying in the receipts for the person who is buying the fuel. So to make it as automated as possible. And as I said, the pilot phase is ongoing with voluntary taxpayers, and very soon that will be rolled out to all taxpayers. The simplification of the VAT return filing, there was a public notice, and this just, I can just read it for the sake of those who are not able to see it, but it's available on the KRA website. Update on the simplification of the VAT filing for VAT registered taxpayers. So the Kenya Revenue Authority wishes to notify all VAT registered taxpayers to simplify the VAT filing process. The VAT return will be pre-filled with tax information available to KRA starting from November 2024 tax period. We therefore advise all VAT registered taxpayers to confirm the accuracy of their pre-filled November 2024 VAT return prior to submitting the return by 20th December 2024. And in addition, we remind all taxpayers of their obligation to issue an electronic tax invoice and transmit the invoice details to KRA as prescribed in law. Please note that any input VAT claim that is not validated through eTims or eTims or against existing customs import declaration for import VAT claim will not be allowed for deduction in the return. And KRA will continue to sensitize taxpayers on the simplified VAT return filing process to support and facilitate all taxpayers to comply with the electronic tax invoice requirements. And we take this opportunity to appreciate all compliant taxpayers. And for further information, you know how to contact KRA. Therefore, that has been ongoing, and I believe VAT taxpayers have been filing and have found it very easy to file their returns. So you can reach out to us via those numbers on the screen or our email address, which is teamsupport@kra.go.ke, or you can visit our office at the JCOT Towers on 8th floor or 7th floor. It's along Kenyatta Avenue. Thank you very much for your time. So I will now hand it over to, I'll hand it back for any questions or comments.
Thank you so much, Madam Dorcas. That was very insightful. Maybe you can appreciate her through the reactions. Thank you so much for that. I think you've answered a question or two from some of the questions that I've seen streaming in on the chat. So for sure, we really have so many questions on our Q&A. And even we have so many followers who are following on our KRA TV, and there are so many questions that are there. So I don't want us to take a lot of time. At this juncture, also allow me to welcome our presenter also and co-host from the BTO office, Mr. Einstein. Einstein, hi.
Hello, how are you?
Fine, fine. Welcome, Karibu. Sorry, we didn't recognize you at the beginning of the session, but Karibu Sana. So he's here to respond to our questions that are on the chat as to the VAT auto population. And I can see there are quite a number. So I don't know how to go about this. Maybe I stand guided from both Einstein and the eTims team. Would you like just to go through the questions and respond to them, whichever applies to eTims, whichever applies to the VAT auto population, or should I be reading them out? How would you prefer?
I think I'll just go quickly through what is touching on auto-populated, maybe to give some insights. I was trying to handle some of them. I will read them as we respond to them. Maybe that would be the best. Quickly go through them.
Okay, thank you for that. I'll begin from the first questions that came in at exactly 11, all the way to, I think, maybe midsection, then we can see how to go about it with the rest of the questions. So on a Q&A, Henry was asking that there was the issue of Safaricom invoices having the VAT amount discrepancy because of how VAT was being calculated and we were informed that the issue was being resolved and that we should be able to claim the invoices in January. However, the problem still persists to date, even with the February invoices. Kindly shed light on this.
Now, maybe just to clarify on the issue relating to Safaricom invoices, not all Safaricom clients have this problem. This is only touching on Safaricom invoices where there is an element of excise duty involved, and the computations were not being correct in terms of the taxable amount that was being used for VAT purposes. We had communicated this with Safaricom, and we were jointly working together to resolve the same. Unfortunately, the January and February invoices will not have the correct values as of now because they are still working on a resolution of the same. We had given them, they had asked for some time to resolve because it was involving a major update on their system. So we gave them up to the end of March to be able to have resolved all the issues that are touching on the excise related invoices that were having VAT incorrectly computed.
All right. Okay, I think that has answered Brian, Moses, Esther, Vivian. I think there were so many questions about these Safaricom invoices. But if you feel the response is not sufficient, maybe you can still respond on the chat. Irene O is asking, invoices that are already on the KRA portal but were not captured on the CSV file, how did this happen?
I think that question is too general. If you say invoice captured on online and missing on CSV, I don't know what they mean. Are they trying to say there is an invoice that is missing on iTax or something? Maybe they could clarify more for a better response. I don't want to give a blanket response that is not meaningful.
Okay. All right. Einstein, I don't know, there's some noise from the background. Okay. Naomi is asking, I realized some of my this is an eTims question. Okay, allow me just to read this one out because I had started reading it I realized that some of the purchases with eTims invoices have not been captured in my VAT return. On scanning the QR, I get the message, no details found for given invoice. The invoice bears all the requisites for a valid tax invoice. Can I claim VAT manually? Or how do I go about this? That's from Naomi.
In this scenario, I'm believing Naomi is the client that is claiming the invoice, and we had issues where sorry for that. I think Naomi is the customer who's trying to claim the invoice. We had some instances where we had invoices that have been generated by the Android PDA, dropping the pins of the buyers. These have since been resolved, and we had put out communication that the suppliers of such invoices should be able to retransmit the invoices. Then KRA will do the updates to allow the various customers to be able to claim the same. So maybe we would request Naomi to reach out to the supplier to retransmit the invoice. Then it will be able to update the PIN. I know the checker is showing that the PIN is there, but again, you realize uh, there is a difference in the information that is being processed by the checker and the return filing system itself. As much as the two are independent, there was a bug that was affecting specifically Android solutions, and these have since been resolved. So the way forward is for the supplier to resubmit or retransmit the invoice on the device that they are using. Then we will be able to update the PIN so that the buyer can be able to claim the input that was charged on the same. Maybe also just to clarify is that the input is usually valid for up to 6 months from the invoice date for the various purchaser to be able to claim the same. I hope this clarifies the issue. Could you confirm if I was audible? Maybe. Dorcas?
Oh, sorry. It's me. Sorry. Sorry, it's me who was muted. Yes, you are audible, Einstein.
I think I'll
It's
I'll
just that
I'll
we
go through
have a
some
bit
of.
of noise from the background.
Okay, I'm resolving that.
Mm. And I was also saying, I don't know if that would, the response you've just given would be sufficient for Devan Weby, who was saying that they had applied for VAT obligation in January, but the approval came in February. And by this time, they had incurred some input tax for some transactions that were done in January. So how can he claim the tax suffered, input tax suffered because the law stipulates 6 months?
Could you please come again?
Devan Weby says we have a taxpayer who applied for VAT obligation in January, but it was approved in February. And by this time, he had incurred some input tax for some transactions that were done in January. How can he claim the input tax suffered because the law stipulates 6 months?
Yeah. I know the law says 6 months, but again, this 6 months comes into play when you have the obligation added to your PIN, where you had VAT that you had incurred, which was not uh, after the date when you had been approved for the VAT obligation. You usually have to apply for refund on inventory, VAT on inventory. And what will happen is KRA will be able to, of course, they'll do an audit of the invoices that you have added, and then they will issue you with an inventory adjustment voucher or inventory claim voucher that you will use to offset against your VAT. But for any invoices that you had incurred before the date of the VAT obligation itself, you will not be able to claim the same. The only alternative way is for your VAT obligation to be backdated, and that would mean for you to file also for the past periods that maybe you had not charged VAT because it had not been approved for your period.
All right. Hasha is asking that he's saying they're using the online eTims, and they're exporting software services out of Kenya.
You are breaking a bit. I can't hear you.
Can you hear me now? Hello? Hello? Hello, Einstein, can you hear me?
I think the application is indicating that you are trying to communicate, but I cannot hear your audio. So if you had said something, I don't think I have been able to get that.
I don't know. Diana, can you hear me clearly?
Yes, I
You are now
can hear
audible,
you.
yes.
Okay. Sawa. So maybe we can proceed. I was reading out Hasha's concern. They're saying we are exporting software services out of Kenya. Any HL's code we picked in the auto-populated return showing under section D 0 rated, but not under section D2 exports. Kindly share some light on this. I don't know if you got that. We are exporting software services out of Kenya.
Yeah,
Any HOS code we
I
picked, the auto-populated return is showing under Section D 0 rated, but not under Section D2 exports.
I got that.
Okay.
So maybe just to clarify, for exports, either goods or services, there are specific HS codes that the taxpayer is required to use for them to be mapped correctly to their auto-populated return. So equally, we had provided some of these HS codes on the website under publications. So if you go under publications, then eTims, you'll be able to see the HS codes that relate to exportation of goods or exportation of services. So if you are using eTims, the exportation of services has a specific code that maybe we will be sharing on the chat as the training proceeds.
So
So
the code is
I'll
here
I'll, I'll
actually.
be
He's
looking
shared
for.
the code.
Okay.
He has shared the code
Yes,
with
yes,
us.
yes. I've seen the code and I'm trying to confirm whether the same is the correct code or not. I have to confirm this.
Okay.
So we can be proceeding. I'll be able to clarify the same as the training proceeds.
Sawa sawa. Thank you. Brian has a rejoinder. I have a scenario where a supplier has raised an invoice in error without capturing my buyer name. When correcting this transaction with a credit note, they captured my PIN. On the VAT return, I'm mandated to declare this credit note, whereas I have not claimed VAT on the invoice, it is reversing. How do we tackle this? As it's a loss to me, as I pay extra VAT, and Henry also has the same concerns.
Could you please come again?
Hello, Einstein, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. So Brian says there's a scenario where a supplier has raised an invoice in error without capturing my buyer name. When correcting this transaction with a credit note, they captured my PIN. On the VAT return, I'm mandated to declare this credit note, whereas I have not claimed VAT on the invoice, it is reversing. How do we tackle this since it appears to be a loss as I have to pay extra VAT?
Now, for this specific scenario, there are two sides to it. One, it could be a genuine mistake on the supplier side, and two, it could be as a result of the issue that we just explained, whereby we had scenarios where some eTeams solutions, specifically Android-based solutions, were dropping some pins. And we also have some fixes that we have provided for this, and we shall also be doing the same during the filing season for them to be able to be reversed or the pins to be removed from the credit notes. So we would request for the same to have been escalated to the station so that the invoice is shared with us in the event that we have not been able to resolve it with the global issues that we are resolving. So we are aware there are some things where the original invoice did not have the credit note, but the credit note has been able to capture the PIN of the buyer. One of the recourse action is to escalate this so that KRA can be able to also relate to what the cause could have been. So where in the event that the supplier had made an error in issuing of the credit note, we normally reach out to just guide them on the best practice going forward.
All right. Okay. We have Anonymous attendee. They're saying clarify on how to claim input VAT in instances where most of our sales are exempt, but we have vatable import VAT. Apportioning does not work in the CSVs for imports.
Now, for claiming of the input tax, apportioning only comes into play where you have exempt and zero-rated sales. Where you have none of these, and you're only dealing with the general rated sales, again, for section F for purchases, you can input the invoices that you are only required to claim for the same. The system will not enforce you to declare all the input purchases that you have. So if you have any of the invoices that we have provided to you that are not applicable to VAT and maybe they will be applicable to the income tax return, then you can remove the same from the section F for input taxes. The apportionment that is in the system only caters for exempt and zero-rated sales where applicable. So if you don't have any of these, then the field for apportioning will not be populated from my end.
All right. Brian says, I have a scenario where a supplier credit note in Kenya shillings transmitted to iTax in US dollars, and the figure is very significant. My return is not going through as I have to declare this credit note, and my liability is very significant. How can we tackle this?
This kind of challenge used to come up a lot when we rolled out the auto-populated return in March. And for this one, I'll give you clarification because one, we cannot convert an invoice from foreign currency to local. Secondly, the VAT Act itself stipulates that invoices should be generated in the local currency. So we do not expect the supplier to submit to us invoices that are in foreign currency. One of the recourse action is for the supplier to be able to transmit the invoices with the required currency as per the law. And if there is any integration challenge in how they are transmitting the same, then they should be able to resolve this in their system so that the correct figures come to us. Yes, they might have captured the invoice in foreign currency, but some of the suppliers we have in the market, they usually transmit to us the converted figures. So I would advise Brian to liaise with the supplier that issued them the invoice to be able to transmit the same to KRA with the correct currency. So for KRA, we do not tamper with the invoice information. The correction has to be done from the supplier side.
All right. Thank you for that. We have a participant who's requesting that you shed more light on invoices that pick on auto-populated section B without PIN, yet when generating the sales invoices through eTims, they normally key in the PIN of the client. So how do they go about this?
Now for section B, the invoices that will come for section B under PIN are only those that will meet the following condition. One, you had input the PIN, and secondly, the PIN that you had input is an active valid PIN which has VAT obligation. So if you put a PIN that does not have the VAT obligation, for instance, like my own PIN, then that sale that you had made to me, a client that does not have PIN, will be included for section B without PIN. So if you look even at the structure of the VAT return itself, the lump sum sale there usually says sell to customers without PIN or customers not registered for VAT. So the line items will only belong to customers who are registered for VAT. If you find you had put PIN and it is put under the lumped up sales for customers without PIN, then it follows that PIN does not have VAT obligation. And you can check this by verifying the PIN on the PIN checker. You will find it does not have a VAT obligation. But this does not mean that you need to stop putting PIN for non-VAT registered taxpayers, because you also remember that there is the annual return that requires that client to have their PIN captured on the invoice for them to be able to claim that expense. So for VAT purposes, the line items are only those to which the customers are registered for VAT, and those lump sum will include where you had not put PIN, or the PIN that you had put either is incorrect, or also the taxpayer is not registered for VAT.
That is very clear. Thank you for that. We have Joyce Gabe, Wesley, Paul. They have similar questions. They're saying, is there a problem with viewing of the withholding VAT certificates on iTax for the months of October and November?
Currently, the only backlog we have for withholding VAT certificates is February, and there are about 400 certificates remaining that will be cleared by this weekend. For October, November, all of them should be generated. Word of caution is when you're trying to query for these certificates, just don't look at October and November only. For VAT, the certificates are usually posted in the period in which they have been generated. I know this is different from how income tax withholding certificates are generated. For income tax withholding, they are usually generated for the period they belong to. But for VAT, the certificates are posted for the period when the system was running through the batch that is outstanding, managed to generate the certificate. So if you had made a payment for withholding VAT, let's say in October, and the system, when executing the certificates, did not manage to generate the same in October and was trying to generate the certificate in December, then you will be able to find that certificate in December and not October. So maybe if you go through the certificates generated under that payment registration number, you will be able to get the count of all the certificates generated, only that they will be in different periods.
Mm. All right. Thank you for that. We have another similar concern to Harsha's from our anonymous attendee, and they've shared the codes on the chat. I think we can look into it. Einstein, a similar incident like that one for Harsha. So we have another question. This is just administrator.
Before we proceed, I'm presuming that these codes are for exportation of taxable services, you said?
Yes, yes.
Just to clarify, for users of eTims, the code is 990-22023, exportation of services. So if you have anything different from this, then the same will not be populated under D2. For Teams, the code is also on the website, and it's usually 0023.22.01. Those are the two codes that are used for exportation of services. We also have the other ones for good. I believe the one raised here is for services. And those are the only two codes that if you put for services, then your services will be under exportation of services sheet D2 of the VAT return. Anything other than that, they will be local zero-rated sales.
Thank you so much for that clarity. An administrator is asking for taxpayers with several serial numbers registered under one PIN. The invoice amounts tend to add up together for the similar invoice numbers. What is the resolution since iTax sales amounts? I lost that. Sorry about that.
Okay, I get the issue. We have eTims taxpayers who have branches in their solutions, and that's how they end up having multiple serial numbers. For these kind of transactions, we've had issues whereby their sales are either overstated or understated. And currently, we are working on a solution for the backlog cases. There is a permanent fix that has been provided for going forward. And once we have completed this, I think we had communicated in the previous trainings we were doing that where a taxpayer has a similar scenario, then according to their correctly computed VAT, they should proceed and make payment for the same. And once we have resolved the issue of the backlog, then we will also communicate to the various tax stations to communicate to the affected taxpayers for them to be able to file the returns with the correct figures. So currently we are still working on the backlog from October to February invoices that have been received. And once this has been done, we will be able to communicate the same to the taxpayers. So currently we advise that where you have such invoices, you make payment if there is any from your self-assessed VAT. Then once the solution has been resolved, then you can be able to file the same.
All right. Lagoro is asking, are tour services vatable? And if they are, clarify on tour pricing, which is always a packaged price. Tour services.
I think I'll open this to our eTims team on I know it is also touching on whether the same are exempted from eTims invoicing or not. So maybe I'll invite Diana to communicate or comment on the same.
Please repeat the question. We didn't get it clearly on our side. What was the...
So the name is Lagoro, and they're asking whether tour services are vatable, and if they are, clarify. Yes, and if they are, you clarify. Clarify as tour pricing is always a packaged price.
The question would be, are they asking if the tour services are exempted from eTims, or are they asking from VAT?
I think from VAT, because they're asking if tour services are vatable.
That one they can check in the VAT Act on the first and second schedule on if they are vatable or not, because they're not in our exclusion from eTims. But if they want to confirm, they can confirm it from the VAT Act, the first and second schedule, where they can get to know which services are exempted and which one are zero rated and which one at 16%. But for eTims, they are not.
Okay. Irene is asking advice on duplicated invoices on output VAT that are generated by the iTax system from November to date. iTax does not allow to file output VAT less than its own auto-populated VAT.
I think this question is similar to the one we just answered on eating branches. And I think the communication that we've made is clear enough. The invoices are not duplicated. It is just as a result of the system merging up the cells from the different branches and ending up to give a value that is higher than the original invoice amount. So unless this is not the scenario, then we would request the affected taxpayer to raise this with their station so that we can have an analysis on it. But currently, we do not have an issue of duplicated invoices, but rather overstated invoices as a result of the eTims taxpayers having branches. Okay. Hope this is clear.
All right. Thank you. I think that would also answer our participant who goes by the name Finance, because they were saying they have challenges filing the February, which the VAT is overpopulated, has overpopulated invoices with very high values, and the portal is rejecting their submissions. Okay. There are so many questions. I think you read one, they keep popping up, and I think I'll try to go through many of them, as many as I can. So this one is saying we pay our staff medical insurance through KCB Bank Assurance Limited, and they don't give us eTims invoice. Is that insurance premiums are also? Is it that insurance premiums are also exempt from eTims? From eTims. Diana, I don't know if you got that.
Hello. Yeah, we got that. And during the presentation, I think the exclusion were presented. The exclusions that we have are the emoluments, the imports, the investment allowances, the airline passenger ticketing, the interests, the fee charge, expenses subjected to withholding, that is final tax, services provided by non-residents, and any other exclusion that are provided under the section 23 of the 23A of the TPA. So those are the only exclusions we have.
All right. At this point, allow me to check some of the questions that we have on our YouTube channel. So Sodi Jojo is asking, I have tried to file my VAT returns, but unfortunately, most of my suppliers invoices which I have tried to file my VAT returns, but unfortunately, most of my suppliers invoice while uploading, I'm getting this message, generated purchases invoice number with no invoice date is not in eTims. So that's a concern from Sudi Jojo.
Maybe just to clarify on this, one, I would prescribe the following. For Sudi Jojo to take a sample of the invoice being rejected, go to the invoice checker and query the invoice. Now, once you query the invoice, there are a few things I would want you to compare with what the invoice has provided as the details of that invoice vis-a-vis what is being declared in the return. Now, on the invoice checker, what we would want to see, if it is a Teams invoice, you would want to see your name as the buyer being present on the invoice results that are being revealed to you. And again, secondly, I would want you to compare the date that the invoice checker has and the date that you have in your return, and also compare the value that you are claiming on that invoice as the taxable amount vis-a-vis what you have declared in your return. Now, if there is any inconsistency between these two, then the system will be able to reject that invoice because it is matching against what was transmitted vis-a-vis what you are trying to declare in your return. Mostly you'll find if the dates are not in sync, then the invoice will be flagged as not being in Teams or Teams. I hope that is clear.
I hope so too. Thankfully, he's following from the YouTube channel. In case it's not, I think he can refer to the response and the instructions you've clearly given. Thank you for that. Um, we have a very long question. I don't know if I can be able to read it out or I share, or you can be able to check from Philip. Or I can just read out. Hi, I'm Philip from Kisumu. In February, my team's device malfunctioned. In the process of repair and testing, several invoices were transmitted more than once. This led to overstating of my sales. I'm using an accounting system which is connected to the team's device. In the accounting system, the concerned clients were only invoiced at once and only transmission was done more than once. How do I remove the extra invoices transmitted in February? And how do I account for this in March return? Here's a follow-up question. Self-supply CSV was generated, which is strange because we deal in rentals and we cannot supply ourselves rent. It appeared in both sales and purchases. How can this be reversed?
Now, on the issue of self-supply, I would wish to comment as follows. What you are required to do is, for the parts of sales, you are required to put that invoice under the lump sum figure. And then on the purchases, you are not required to claim the same. Then on the issue of duplicated invoices, we can only give a concrete solution once the samples have been shared to us. Because we are expecting that the trader invoice system number is different, but is the same, but the control unit invoice number is different for all these invoices that you are actually marking as duplicate, because that's what we check, and we have a similar check in the system that compares where the values are the same, the other invoice details are the same, but the control unit invoices are the ones that are changing, with the trader invoice system being constant. So if it is a scenario whereby your trader invoice system number is not also similar across board, then our system will not be able to flag it as a duplicate invoice. But again, for this issue of duplicated invoices, we would request you to share sample duplicated invoices for us to analyze and tell you whether you need to perform some action on your integration with your accounting system or the system that you are using vis-a-vis the Teams control unit that you have integrated to yourself.
All right. Beth, I can see your question on the chat, but I think it's incomplete. Please come again on your question. Meanwhile, Jennifer Mayo requests for general advice. She says she has a supplier whom she transacted and the transaction failed to issue invoices last month due to the eTims machine's failure. So the supplier claimed to have reported the issue to KRA, and now she has a letter, and she's asking if she can use this letter given by the supplier to fail to make payments to KRA.
I think I will not advise on using a letter from a supplier to fail to make payments, because you also realize when you have tax liabilities that are due, the penalties and interest will be borne by you. If a supplier had indicated that they had an issue and they are still resolving the same, then they should be able to issue you an invoice once they have resolved the same. But again, the supplier should make follow-up with the team's team for feedback on the status of the issue that they had reported. Again, it's against the supplier and KRA to know whether the issue was really escalated or not. A letter from the supplier does not suffice as an escalation to KRA.
Okay. Anita Wangui has a question. Two questions. How can taxpayers with public service vehicles income issue their invoices using eTims? And do they do one invoice per month, or how do you go about it? How do they go about it? The second question is about those with residential rental income. How are the invoices issued?
Uh, please repeat the question so that we get it. I think it's a two-part question.
Okay, so taxpayers with PSVs and those with residential rental income, how are these invoices issued? And are they issued through eTims?
Yeah, all invoices are meant to be issued through eTims as per the Finance Act that gave us the way that we issue all our invoices through the eTims platform. When to issue is a matter of tax point. When was the transaction? When did the transaction happen? The invoices are meant to be issued at the point of transaction. So if it's rental at the end of the month and the rent is paid, then that's when they issue the receipt. When it's PSV, once the transaction has been done, that's the tax point. That's when they issue the invoice. So invoices are issued at the point of sale.
Okay, Wilfred Alambo asks, does it mean that any expense not expressly exempted to have an eTims or Teams invoice will be disallowed? And will they be on iTax when filing the self-assessment return?
I think the guidance was clear on this. All expenses that are claimed against a taxable income, they need to be supported by teams and eTeams, and teams and eTeams invoice. And having an eTeams and teams invoice in itself is not enough to support an expense unless your PIN is captured on it as the consumer of the service or the goods. I hope this is clear enough.
Okay, thank you. JK is asking, is it allowed legally to have both eTeams and the gadget together? Diana, can you have both the online solutions and the gadgets at the same time?
We advise you're either on eTims or Teams. You choose one of the solution. So you're either on it. What we advise is for record keeping and record tracing, you choose one of the two. You're either on Teams or on eTims.
This is off a bit, but because I've seen it recurring, maybe we can respond to this about a company that does not have any property or assets, but they handle No, they don't have any issues to do with the property or assets, but they have rental income that was erroneously activated in the portal, or they were erroneously registered for rental income. Maybe we can advise him, because I've seen another similar question to an obligation, a rental obligation erroneously added to their PIN. Just that one, taxpayer.
I think the best advice would tell them to visit their tax station so that they handle that with the accounts manager.
Okay, so we have addressed issues to do with missing withholding VAT certificates and how to go about it and the backlog that is there. We have addressed issues on on export services. Okay. All right. I think we have addressed most of the questions that have come in through our chat, because I can see some are repetitive. There is one, however, from accounts. It's a long one. I don't know if Diana and Dorcas, you've seen the question from accounts. And there are some comments from Vivian Nauma, from Ruth Magiri about eTims and Teams not working well for traders.
I think we can sit, give us a minute to just read it through.
It's quite long.
Yeah. So they did.
Okay, even as you absorb that, we can take in a few more questions. I think we can end this at in the next 20 or so minutes. Abdul asks, does turnover affect eTims registration? If my turnover is less than 5 million annually, should I still register for estimates? Please clarify.
I think to clarify this, maybe just to mention here categorically that eTims registration is not based on turnover. Whether you are VAT registered or not, you need to issue a proper tax invoice. So the proper tax invoice could either have the relevant VAT rates or it will not have VAT. So again, also for the same taxpayer would also wish to clarify that if there are any expenses that they would want to claim against their turnover, then it has to be also supported by teams and eTims. So the registration is not for the purposes of you being a VAT registered or not. The 5 million threshold that is usually in law is for registration of VAT as an obligation and not invoicing as Teams solutions.
Okay, thank you. We have a question from CPM Muruki, David. He's saying, we issued a pro forma invoice to our customers in December. However, in late December, the customer withheld 5% and paid based on the pro forma invoice. By the time we followed up with the customer, it was early this year, and we had not yet issued the eTims invoice for the pro forma invoice. Can we backdate the eTims invoice, or how should we manage this situation?
An eTims invoice cannot be backdated, unfortunately. So it will just have to be issued with the current date.
Hello, Einstein. Sorry, there's some noise. Please come again with the response.
I think what Einstein was saying is you cannot backdate an eTims invoice. So you just have to raise the invoice. The invoice date picks the day it was raised.
Okay. Because I'm saying it's a recurring question, even from the anonymous attendee. Please address the date issue. Okay. Date
How
issue,
the
I can also see it.
how the eTims software has been created, or even the teams, it does not have the capability of backdating the dates. It picks the date of transaction that you raised.
Okay. I don't know if you've gone through that question or concern from accounts, Diana.
Yes, I have. And the question, I'll read as I answer, because account is saying I have a supplier who has raised an invoice, but I did not receive all the goods. So they did a credit note in October 2024, which came in November. Another credit note of the same invoice, and amount was in auto-populated, which I tried to drop it, and it cannot allow me to file returns. Now, what I don't know is, was the credit note, did they do the credit note on the invoice twice, like 2 credit notes on one invoice, or it was 1 credit note? The question is not clear on our side. Because if it was done once and it transmitted, then that's what they saw on the pre-populated return, and they will have to declare it. So what I don't get is, did they get 2 invoices, and were they all transmitted, 2 credit notes? Because how the system is made, you cannot make a credit note that goes beyond the invoice amount. So what we need to know is, were the 2 credit notes reducing the goods that were not received? Because they're saying there, how am I going to claim for this, because it's a loss on my side? When I call the supplier, they have only 1 credit note. So what we don't know is the 2 credit note transmitted. Is that what they mean?
Okay. Maybe they can come again on the chat, or if you are able to raise your hand, you can give you a chance to ask your question. I think the hand is raised. No. This is from CPA Morioki. He's the one who had asked the prior question. So maybe let me give him the chance to
I'm seeing
expand.
I'm seeing that accounts are saying the credit note was supposed to be 1. So if it was 1 and it transmitted, then that's what they're meant to, then they are meant to declare it on their return. So I don't understand when they say they want to drop it when they got a credit note of the goods they did not receive.
Okay, so if you are able to raise your hand. Maybe we can give you a chance to expound on what you're trying to say on the chat. That is accounts. So meanwhile, maybe we can give a chance to CPA Muriuki to ask his question. Okay. Please unmute, David, and go on.
How are you?
We are good, thank you. How are you?
Fine, thank you. Now, I think I have raised wrongly. This one I had raised earlier. Yeah, kindly.
Oh, sawa sawa.
Please remove.
Henry, please unmute and ask your question.
Hi.
Hi.
So my issue is almost the same as the one that you have addressed. I have a credit note whose VAT amount is more than the relevant invoice. And I've actually shared the invoice number and the credit note number on the chat. So because I'm mandated to pay the credit note, it means now my liability will increase because the relevant invoice has less VAT amount. Can you address that? Thank you.
I think how eTims or Teams has been made is the credit note is meant not to exceed the original invoice amount. So if you're having such challenges, then you need to go back to your supplier who needs also to see their supplier of the device, if it's a Teams device, for it to be corrected. That's an issue you sought with the person who sold to you. Because how we made is that the credit note is not meant to exceed the original invoice amount, sorry. Because the credit note makes reference to the original invoice.
Maybe I also noticed even the date of the relevant invoice is also wrong. So I don't know if they are putting these links manually or what, because the invoice is for January, but according to their populated, the relevant invoice date is February. So I don't know if the supplier was inputting these links manually or maybe you can also schedule it on that.
You can pick it up with your supplier who needs to check on their device, especially if it's a Teams device, then they need to go back to the person who sold their device to them. So it's something you pick up with your supplier, Henry, the person who sold to you, who in turn is meant to go to their Teams supplier, the device supplier, for rectification of their device.
It's actually eTims.
It's an eTims invoice.
Yes, I've shared it on the chat.
Maybe you can share the same on our email, on our team support email, or come to Jekwa Towers with that invoice so that we have a look at it. Is that okay? I'm not able to see it on the chat. So you can either send it to team support for further analysis, or you visit our Jekwa Towers offices if you're in Nairobi, or any KRA office near you, or your tax station.
Yeah, I'm just around. I'll do that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for that. We have Stacy. Stacy, kindly unmute. You can ask your question. Stacy?
Yes, I'm here.
Hi.
Hi.
Yes, please
Yeah,
ask
my
your
question was
question or
about,
concern.
yeah, my question was about the invoices. We have a supplier who normally raises his invoices through eTims. Unfortunately, when you download the auto-populated VAT, those invoices are not captured. And even if you try to put them manually, there's an error that it's not an eTims generated invoice. So like, how am I going to do about these invoices? Because since last year, those invoices have not been captured anywhere.
Did you confirm that those invoices transmitted, Stacy? Stacy?
Yeah, I confirmed.
Did they transmit with the buyer details?
Yeah.
Because the best scenario would be those invoices either didn't transmit, or if they transmitted, they didn't transmit with your buyer details, with your correct PIN.
The supplier had captured everything correctly, and I even confirmed if they were transmitted.
By scanning the QR code or through the invoice checker?
QR code.
Okay. Einstein, maybe from our side,
maybe Stacy, could you share the invoice on the chat, please, just now, so that I can pick it up?
Currently, unless I check it from my folder because it's not here with me.
Okay, Stacy, so we give you a few minutes. You'll be back again?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
I'll raise the hand.
Sawa. But remember, we only have about 5 or so minutes to go. Brian Oguta, kindly unmute and ask your question or concern. Seems he's not on the call. Albert Mailu, you can unmute and ask your question or concern. Albert, are you there? I can see you're unmuted, but we can't hear you. Okay. Irene, kindly unmute and ask your question. Yes, good afternoon. All right. I think with that, we can call it an afternoon. It's been an engaging one. We might have not answered or responded to your question in this session, but like Diana clearly said, there is a team support email where you can direct your questions or concerns, and they'll be able to respond to maybe those ones that were not responded to during this session. But at this juncture, allow me to thank our panelists from the eTims team, as well as from business, Einstein, Albert, and Dorcas. We really appreciate your input for this afternoon. A big thank you also to our participants who've been very active and engaging throughout this session. Thank you so much for raising all those questions and for even suggesting some system improvements, policy implementation changes, which will be able to give this input to our management and teams in higher authority. Thank you so much for being an active audience and for maintaining quorum to the end of the session. Let me give this chance to Einstein to give his closing remarks even as we finish. Einstein, welcome.
Thank you. Maybe just to thank the audience for the interactive session. I'm seeing there is a need for more sensitizations based on the number of questions coming in. I would also just wish to put out there to our taxpayers that we have teams that are equipped to give you the support, and you can do this by either reaching out to the tax station offices, or if it's relating to your control unit devices, you can reach out to the team support team at JQuat, and you will be accorded the necessary facilitation that you need. If you have anything that you feel it's off with your control unit device, you can also always reach out for us to be able to give you the necessary support and to support your invoicing journey. And with this, I would wish to give out my heartfelt thanks to the team and the interactive session today. We look forward for more in future. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Our eTims team, maybe I can start with Diana. You can give your closing remarks.
Thank you everyone for being here today. As the eTims team, we are here to support you in whatever challenges you're facing, and we are hoping to be of help. Ours is just to say thank you for being here today. Thank you.
Asante. Dorcas.
Thank you very much, our esteemed taxpayers, and as well as our marketing team and Einstein for walking this journey with all of us. We don't take your time for granted. So have a lovely afternoon.
Have a good one as well. And to our participants, we cannot say thank you enough. This session would not have been possible without your participation, very active participation for that matter. Okay, so I also want to extend a thank you to the tax education team that has made this session possible. Allow me to end at this juncture. My name is Cynthia. I'm from the tax education team, and I wish you all a good afternoon. I can see hands are still going up. But I think we will see how to go about it if we'll have another session and invite you again, because I'm sure we cannot respond to all the questions within the 2 or 3 hours that we have. But maybe we can be doing continuous engagements and sensitizations so that we address the challenges that arise or that we face as taxpayers. But for today, allow me to end it at this point and wish you a good afternoon. Maybe I can also volunteer to end with a word of prayer. Let's pray. We thank you, God, for being with us throughout this session. Thank you for teaching us on how to better understand eTims and even to some extent the VAT auto population. Where we have erred in any way, may you forgive us. Where we have done well, continue to esteem us. Thank you for our participants. Thank you for our panelists. We ask you to continue to enable us be compliant citizens. Even as we seek the knowledge of this world, we may also learn to seek the knowledge of heaven. Until we meet next time, be with us. For this we pray shortly in Jesus' name. Amen. So thank you, everyone. I'm seeing your reactions. Maybe we can keep them coming for our panelists. Asanteni sana, and I wish you a good afternoon. Bye.